If you've opened a news app or even just glanced at a headline recently, you've probably felt that really familiar wave of overwhelm. The modern information cycle can honestly feel chaotic, fragmented, and just endlessly loud. But here's the secret to actually making sense of it all. The news doesn't exist in a vacuum. Literally every single story you read is the product of an invisible, highly complex ecosystem operating behind the scenes. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to decode that ecosystem using the source data to show you exactly how our modern news is built, filtered, and delivered straight to your screen.
Okay, let's dive into this. That feeling of total overwhelm you get when you're doing your daily news scroll, it's not an accident, and it's definitely not just you. To really understand the headlines, we first have to take a step back and understand the broader world that's actively shaping them. Think of the news as a mirror, basically reflecting the massive tectonic plates shifting beneath our society. When the world is complex, well, the news is going to be complex. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by zooming out to look at the macro social forces driving news. Then we'll move into our evolving cultural values, examine the shifting media landscape, and finally wrap things up with navigating the noise. All right, part one, social forces driving news. We're talking about the massive, sweeping, societal earthquakes that completely dominate the landscape before a single word of a news story is even drafted. Climate change is a perfect example of this. It's totally transitioned from being just a niche, specialized science beat into a huge mainstream political concern. Today, a story about a new infrastructure package, a monthly economic report, or a heated election debate is almost inevitably a climate story too. It's become this permanent, totally unavoidable baseline in our ecosystem. Similarly, we've got the constant pressing drumbeat of economics, growing economic inequality, and the relentless pressure of the cost of living. These aren't just isolated business articles anymore, right? They are the daily reality for millions of people. Financial pressure influences everything from our consumer habits to voting patterns to just the overall mood of society. News outlets know this, which is exactly why economic anxiety acts as this relentless undercurrent in almost every major narrative we see today. And beyond the environment and the economy, debates around identity, power, and representation have really taken center stage in global discourse. We're looking at a post-2020 era of growing awareness surrounding racial inequality. We're seeing changing attitudes toward gender and power dynamics from the Me Too movement. We see fierce ongoing debates about immigration and national identity, alongside the increasing visibility of LGBTQ+ rights. As an objective observer, the key takeaway here is that these movements directly shape the stories media outlets choose to tell. They totally redefine what's considered newsworthy. And this brilliantly illustrates our next section, our evolving cultural values. Because these macro social events don't just happen around us, they actually change us internally. Audiences now actively demand new cultural priorities from their media. We have a culture that increasingly values diversity and inclusion, completely expecting to see a broader range of perspectives represented. We're also seeing a massive emphasis on physical and mental well-being, elevating health from a simple lifestyle topic to a critical front-page news vertical. And fascinatingly, we've got this complex, dual-natured relationship with technology. We eagerly embrace AI and new tech, but at the exact same time, we harbor these deep anxieties about our automated future. And because fear is a universally powerful emotion, that exact tension reliably drives massive engagement across every platform. This tension brings us to one of the most highly polarized topics of our time, the cancel culture debate. Neutrally speaking, on one side, there is staunch advocacy for free speech and open expression. On the other, a fierce demand for accountability and swift consequences. Now, we are simply observing this debate, but it's impossible to ignore how this core friction acts as a really heavy filter on modern journalism. It affects what gets published, how it's phrased, and how the public reacts to the narrative. Now that we've seen those societal shifts, let's shift gears ourselves. Section 3, the shifting media landscape. Let's move to and see how this builds into the actual mechanical changes happening in the industry. The physical medium is absolutely fading, as declining print readership forces traditional newspapers to move entirely online just to survive. Meanwhile, opposed to that, social media has aggressively risen as a primary, highly fragmented news source, delivered instantly right to the palm of your hand. Information no longer waits for morning paper, right? It is immediate and it's relentless. But that speed comes with a pretty severe side effect. The rise of digital sharing has led to an explosion of fake news and misinformation. Literally, anyone can publish anything. And because of this direct cause and effect relationship, there's now an incredibly high premium placed on established, trusted news brands. In a sea of totally unverified claims, consumers are retreating back to legacy media organizations they feel they can actually trust to verify the facts. All of this results in the modern digital landscape you and I live in every single day. First off, we live in a participatory society. Audiences are no longer passive readers. We are actively involved in the news. We share, we comment, we create our own content, we argue. Second, there is a fierce, cutthroat competition for your attention in a really crowded space. I mean, think about the notifications lighting up your phone right now. Every app, every outlet, every platform is battling for your eyeballs. And that fundamentally changes the sensationalism and the urgency of the headlines you see. It's an ecosystem that desperately requires a map to navigate. Which brings us to our final stop, Section 4, Navigating the Noise. So the crucial point is really understanding this blueprint of modern news. On one hand, social contexts like inequality, climate change, and identity debates, they provide the raw material, the core issues of our time. Then, cultural contexts, our focus on well-being, inclusion, and our fears about technology, they act as a lens, basically coloring how we interpret those issues. And finally, media contexts, driven by the digital shift and the fight against misinformation, dictate the actual distribution channels. These three pillars interact every single second to create the newsfeed you scroll through over your morning coffee. And that leaves us with one final essential thought for this explainer. If we truly live in a participatory society where the media is in this fierce, constant battle for your attention, how does your own attention shape the ecosystem you consume? Seriously, every click, every share, every extra second you spend hovering over a headline signals to this massive machine exactly what you want more of. You aren't just consuming the news anymore, you're actually helping to build it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll leave you to think about that the next time you open up your feed.